Okay. Magdi, would you a little bit please say something about becoming more and more in the state of glimpse or aware observer, like anything personally you experience that helped that
Yes,
oscillation faster? Thank you.
yes. There is no such thing as becoming more aware, Roya. Awareness does not have an on-off switch. Awareness is, it always is. Pum, pum, pum. I'm still messing with the... So if your question is about more awareness, if I understood your question correctly, there is no such a thing. But what you could do is deconstruct the belief that awareness is personal and limited. You can deconstruct the belief that awareness arises out of the brain or is dependent on the body or travels from one body to another via the inquiry into the question, what evidence do you have to support the notion or the belief that consciousness is personal and limited? Because in your question, you're asking about, can there be more awareness? Well, you could have more food in your refrigerator because you went shopping. So before you had 10 tomatoes, now you have potatoes, tomatoes, onions, and zucchini. Because tomatoes and potatoes and zucchinis are things. You can have more things or less things. It's so simple. But you cannot have more or less of awareness, because awareness is not a thing. So we need to understand, first of all, that awareness refers to the reality which perceives. In this moment, you perceive. Right? So that which perceives is not an object. That you can have more or less of it. Only if you assume that consciousness is a concept or some experience, that you can have more experiences, more better experiences, experiences that last a longer time. But this is not awareness. These are mind states, for example. You could drink 2 glasses of wine instead of 1, or 3 or 4 glasses of wine instead of 2. And you can experience a certain state of euphoria or lightheadedness or whatever, happiness. But that has nothing to do with consciousness or awareness. You follow?
Yes, yes.
So don't imagine awareness to be something. Awareness is the reality which is imagining. It imagines and it perceives. You can imagine a unicorn, you perceive a unicorn as an image. But consciousness is not a personal experience. You can experience a sensation. You can experience a certain thought. But the reality which perceives, that's consciousness. So consciousness means I. I, whatever it is right now that perceives, I perceive. Whatever it is that is, I am. So consciousness refers to I. There cannot be more of I or less of I. And this I is, it is what it is. When you don't define this I as being Roya or Roya's experiences, then you are I without any issues. I already is I. And there are no questions about more I or less I, except if you imagine I to be, if you imagine yourself, meaning there's only one self. If you imagine yourself to be a limited entity somehow, you follow?
Yes, yes, thank you. Yes. Thank you.
So whenever somehow you sense a certain unhappiness, take a look. You may find that at that moment of unhappiness, you are assuming yourself, meaning you're assuming the reality which perceives, to be a mother, a father, a woman, a person, to be somebody good, somebody bad, meaning a limited entity, which doesn't exist. But although this limited entity doesn't exist, because you have at that moment adopted this belief, you're experiencing yourself existing in time and space, moving closer and closer towards your death. You experience the angst, the sense of limitation, worry, concern. You pray to God to help you, give you a better future.
Yes.
And you can at that moment drop it. At that moment, you have to understand that it's okay to pause that model. Trust that it's okay to pause that model. You don't need to spin that belief in those feelings. You don't need to. You can drop it right then and there. And I know it may feel like, oh my goodness, it's difficult. So there may be within the body some sensations that may arise. What's going to happen to me? But these sensations are not going to kill you. They're okay. You can allow these sensations to just take their course. But you have unplugged, unplugged the fan. That's what matters, that you unplug the fan. So the blade may spin a little bit longer because of the momentum. But in time they'll stop. They're slower and slower, and it comes to rest.
Yes, thank you. So if the concepts or thought or beliefs or assumptions.
There is a difference between a concept and a belief. Concept can be can have their function. They have their purpose. They can be useful. The concept of chair, the concept of mountain, the concept of body, concepts are not beliefs. They are representations that are useful for communication, for functioning, the functioning of the body-mind in the realm of the world. A belief, and in our case, we speak about a very particular belief, which is the belief that consciousness is personal and limited. We don't speak about the belief that there are blue men on the moon, you know. Anyways, a belief is a thought that has no evidence that yet to substantiate it. Right? So it's stands. It's a thought that has some rigidity because we have accepted this thought, although there is no evidence for it. So the belief that consciousness is a female consciousness or a male consciousness or a personal consciousness is a thought that behind it has a stubborn position that this thought is true, although there is no evidence that supports that position. So we don't care so much about concepts. The concept moon, the concept consciousness. There can be concept consciousness as well, which refers to the experience of consciousness. So right now when I'm speaking, I use the term consciousness, I'm using a concept, words. But the word consciousness refers to the reality which is perceived right now, which is not a concept. There is a reality right now which perceives, which is perceiving, and it knows it's perceiving. And that is not a concept, that is experiential. But there is no issue with using the term, the concept consciousness in language. As long as you don't confuse the concept to be the reality. In other words, the map is not the territory, right? But we use the map, right? So there is a certain usefulness to concepts. But what usefulness is there to a belief that has no evidence to support it, or a belief that has not been investigated? It's better to, if you're interested in the investigation of the belief, to hold the belief lightly, to hold it as the subject of your study, as your cobai. Cobai? Is that the right term? Cobai? Studying, the subject of your study. So you hold the belief lightly as a subject of your study, and you study, you investigate that belief.
Yes, thank you so much. A lot to ponder on. Thank you.